Hello and welcome back. If you follow the channel, you already know that my HP 9825, famously used by Mr. Fancy Pants in... Yes, we found him! The one and only Mr. Fancy Pants, whose picture I proudly showed in all the episodes of my HP 9825 repairs. His real name is Bob Stern, and he's one seriously pedigreed engineer. We found him thanks to a viewer who used to be his roommate and recognized him. And if we'd known where to look, we'd have found him all over YouTube a long time ago. As of today, he's still working for Keysight as their principal Metrologist Emeritus. Impressive. Now I should have called him Mr. Fancy Title, really. So you can find him on quite a few Keysight's videos about the subject, including this recent live interview by the show's current host. But back to the famous picture. Bob was the software engineer responsible for automating the HP 8950B, a pioneering radio test setup featuring some of the very first HPIB instruments. He posed for a picture with the machine he was actually working on. I couldn't wait to talk to him via Zoom. Bob apologizes for the big band-aid he has on his forehead, as he recently had some minor skin surgery. I guess, like the vintage HP equipment, we vintage people are sometimes in need of repair now and then.
For this call today, I was just reflecting how far automation has come. When I joined the company in August of '76, there was one hardware engineer who had designed that interface box, and there was one software engineer who had written maybe 2/3 of the code, and then he left to go back to get a master's degree in the East Coast somewhere. And so they wanted to finish this thing, and when I was hired, they said, "Can you program?" And I said, "Sure."
Well, first of all, the question that everybody wants to know, is there a story about the pants?
I tried to look up the name of the illustrator from the catalog, and I wouldn't have talked to her for 42 years, but she was pretty mad when I showed up that way, but she said, "Dress nice."
Well,
So
you nailed it.
So those were polyester bell bottoms. That was fashionable. I mean, you can't see the shoes, but those were saddle shoes, highly polished, two tones.
It looks so good that I thought they would have hired a model for the picture.
No, HP didn't do that.
HP had indeed a tradition to take instrument pictures with HP employees and not models, like this one for the HP 35 calculator, where the HP 35 is clearly the star of the picture. But in this famous one, I'm not sure that the calculator is the star of the picture anymore. But no, she's not a model. This is Karen Cambria, an HP engineer, with the calculator she used in her daily work. This is another famous picture showing the HP 5451 Fourier transform analyzer. Same problem here, you have to focus really hard to see a computer in the picture. The story goes that she was a French HP employee, chosen to go with the French mathematician Joseph Fourier heritage theme. And while we are on the fashion theme, there are of course other fancy pants appearances, like this one in the 1979 catalog. And no, we confirm this is not Bob, he would have given the HPIB class rather than taken it. And here is Deck's version of Fancy Pants computer engineering. But Bob is a true engineer, and what he really wanted to talk about is what the system actually was, and how he remembered using the then brand new HP 9825 and the HPIB bus.
I'll tell you a little bit about that system and how it fit in at the time, if you like. Well, when I came out of college, my first job was with the Stanford Park division of HP in 1976. And at that time, they had just invented the HP interface bus, so-called HPIB. A lot of people later called it 488, yes. But that was only when HP gave it away. Mm-hmm. But it was the HP interface bus. And looking at let's see, I'm looking at that. At the top would have been 62 something or other power supply.
Yeah, I have it, actually.
Yeah, next one down is a 5328 counter.
Yes,
And then
I
that would have been probably a 3455 voltmeter, I'm thinking.
yeah, I have that too. Yes, the black they made a black version of it. That's correct.
Right.
Oh, this sure is one of my favorite voltmeters. I'm sure you spied it on many videos, like this one testing the repaired alto power supply, or if you follow on Patreon, showing off its microvolts digits while measuring a newly restored HP precision supply.
The next one down was a custom interface that had switching so that you could connect to whatever you needed to connect to
Test
or
set.
source. And it also had a switchable notch filter because in those days, you measured, if you wanted measured, the most important measurement of any radio was for receiver was sensitivity.
Mm-hmm.
And sensitivity is the minimum RF signal with appropriate modulation, which results in intelligible speech. And nowadays, of course, that would be a bit error rate. But in those days, it was signal plus noise and distortion over noise and distortion. They called it SYNAD for short.
Yeah.
So you would switch in a notch filter and switch it out. You take 2 voltmeter readings, take 20 log of that, and that was your reading. And the requirement was for you were looking for the signal level that would produce 12 dB SYNAD ratio. So then if in going in the system, the one below the shelf, and that was probably some Motorola radio, I'm guessing, broadband, narrowband radio.
Actually, while reviewing the footage with Bob, he meant to say the radio on the shelf is a Motorola radio, but the instrument under the shelf is the famous HP8660A synthesizer, at the time the king of all signal generators, going from 10 kilohertz all the way to 2.6 gigahertz.
Just below the shelf was a 3320 synthesizer.
This one here?
Yeah, and that was used to generate 1 kilohertz. It was a 20 megahertz generator, but it was used to generate 1 kilohertz or 400 hertz tones.
Right.
Of different levels.
So you get it, right? This signal generator is used to modulate the RF signal generator, and the combo makes a calibrated, entirely programmable reference transmitter signal with which you test your radio receiver.
And let's see.
That one is hard to see.
You have to look and remember.
That might be a pulsar. No, it would have this is one of the HPIB boxes.
That is the switch controller.
Right.
Darn it, I can't remember the number right now. But that
I can look it up. But
that's what is actually controlling the interface box that's above the
this one.
Yeah.
Those two are connected.
Right.
So you get HPIB to that, and then it controls this.
Yeah, right. Because the interface didn't speak HPIB. And the bottom is a 436 power meter.
Okay. Yeah.
At the time that we did the system, there were only 12 or maybe 13 instruments that had HPIB, period. That was it.
Really?
That's all there was. And this system had, depending on the option you picked, 10 or 11 of those. So at the time, I was kind of the programming expert, and somebody came through one day from the field and saw what I was doing, and they said, holy shit. And then the next thing I knew, we took 12 of our sharpest field people that were customer engineers, and they became, now let me think, I think they were called HPIB specialists. And so their job was to help people program. If somebody wanted to buy an instrument to, make some measurements in their laboratory, they knew it could be done, but they didn't know how to go about doing it. And these HPIB specialists would show them how. So interestingly, I actually gave a class to all 12 of the first people. Of course, then HPIB got huge after that. And A couple of the coolest things about the 9825 is I had always been, in those days, if everything was compiled, so you'd write a program, you'd have to use a Model 26 key punch, then you'd try to compile it and you'd see if you got any errors, and if you didn't, then you could run it, and that was Fortran. Well, the cool thing about something like HPL is that all you had to do at the end of the instruction is hit the store key, and if it was okay, it took it, and if it wasn't, it didn't.
Interpreted language, and it's so easy and natural to program HPIB. It's a one-liner, which, right, you don't have to install any drivers, anything, no discovery, no nothing, right? You just send to this instrument that string, and off it goes, right?
That interface, that HPIB interface, was magic.
Yeah. And
that turned the 9825 into an instrument controller. I mean, it was magic after that. Because prior to that, automation was really hard to do, really expensive, and always terribly custom. A year or two ago, when I was walking through one of the labs in Santa Rosa, there was one of the young engineers, and there was just an old HPIB cable sitting there. And he said, "Oh, this is useless," and he was going to throw it in the bin. And I said, "Wow, no respect. He's used to LANs and everything else." I had an interesting thought that you might get a kick out of. So yesterday, I swapped out my 30-year-old irrigation controller and put in a new one, which has Wi-Fi control. I was just thinking how far everything has come. It used to be you could only do it with HPIB and this and that.
Right.
Now on your phone you get pictures of the different zones, and you have all this. It's just another app. You just answer questions on screens, and next thing you know, you've got it.
Off it goes. Yeah.
I was quite impressed with the application. What I really enjoyed about that system was, customers would give us a radio or a two-way radio, and they'd say, "Can it test this?" And in a couple of days, I'd take my last demo program and put a new one. And I probably, just like anything, you'd spend about 80% of your time formatting the output. The program was done in probably 10 minutes.
Right.
And they would give that to the customer, and then they almost always said, "Is it okay if we use this on our production line?" And of course, my bosses would say, "Yes, of course." So we would, and so there were a lot of radios that had application programs that were way under 300 lines on the 9825 that got tested in those days, and we would crank those out and give them to people, and it was a really fun time for automation.
So you went through the whole HP, Agile, and Keysight transition.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I still, if I'm talking to somebody, I still know most of the model numbers going all the way back. And if a customer says HP, I don't correct them. And if I say HP, they don't correct me either. I went to a calibration conference one time, and the gentleman who would probably have been considered the principal engineer at the time, I don't remember what happened, but they basically pushed him out. They asked him to retire, because they were trying to trim. And on his way out, he said, if somebody doesn't get into these standards committees, they're going to still make standards, and we're going to have to do them. And if we didn't participate, we're going to be sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote a note to the managers, because I thought, well, he's right. Mm-hmm. And I kind of knew what would happen. And they said, "Okay, you're right. Why don't you do that?" So I didn't really intend to get into that, but I'm pretty sure that's one of the reasons why I was able to continue working without getting let go from 2000 to 2010.
Okay, well, on that one, thanks a lot.
All right.
And
Nice chatting.
We'll be in touch.
All right. It was very pleasant to talk to you, Mark.
Same here. Thank you very much.
Bye then.
Bye.